Welcome to First Dates and Soulmates. I'm your host, Nikki McKnight.
And I'm Meg Casebolt.
And on today's episode, we are talking about self-improvement and how our heroes and heroines and other heroic folk become their best selves. Meg, we're talking about better things. People who want to be better, do better, change their lives for the better.
I feel like you can go to the self-help shelf at the bookstore, but it's not nearly as much fun as also having sex scenes.
If you like your self-help with a side of sex, you should listen to this episode.
Right, I mean, like, I have read so many self-help books over the years. I think that it's something that is very common among, white cis women. We have a lot of things that need to be fixed, and we recognize that. We go to the self-help shelf. Like, half of my books behind me are self-help books and ways to improve my life and ways to feel better. And I think that it's less easy to remember the recommendations that are being given to you if you don't also have a story to put them to. A lot of the self-help books that I've read are also sort of in the business and marketing space to an extent, because there's a lot of overlap for people who run our own businesses, also wanting to improve our own mindset. And one of the things that you always learn in that kind of marketing space is people remember things and are able to process things better if there is a story behind them. And that's why so many self-help books are like, when Nikki came to me, she was like this. And like,
it tells change through the power of positive thinking.
Yeah. And now Nikki is so satisfied with her life. And, and I think that part of the reason that it works so well in the romance space is that because romance is the genre of emotion, of this sort of personal transformation and relationships, whether that's your relationship with yourself, relationship with your partner, relationship with your friends, your family, like those can be the things that help you to make these changes to make yourself a better person. And romance readers are, by definition, we're sort of optimists.
It's true. We like happy things. And I think that fits with, again, it's January. We're kind of talking about stories of people wanting to be better. Last week was Get a Life, Chloe Brown, where the inciting incident in Chloe's story is, almost dying and realizing my obituary would be pretty damn boring with my life as is. So let's go change it. So we wanted to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive into this idea of some sort of inciting incident or desire to change an aspect of their life, one of the main characters in whatever story or film. And that kind of creates the narrative momentum. Because Meg brought up a really good point before we were recording, that all of these stories are going to have a transformation in it.
Every story. That's the whole point of the hero's journey, is you start in the ordinary world and you end in a different place. There's some sort of narrative arc transportation. In a narrative story, not in like erotica where it's just like hot.
Bone, right? Bone, table, rest, bone. Yes.
You really should be a writer, Nikki.
No, I think you I think I would do really well on Wattpad.
But the idea, whether it's a romance or a thriller or a horror story, there's always going to be this transformation for the character. That's what makes stories move. So when we were trying to figure out sort of what is it that makes this self-improvement component interesting, there are so many stories out there where characters go through a transformation over the course of the book, but the inciting incident is not the reason for the transformation. They slowly grow over the course of the book as part of that character narrative, but it's a second act, third act shift. Yeah. And what we're looking at here is Chloe almost gets hit by a bus on page 1 of the book. And that is when she decides she wants to change her life. She makes her list. She goes in search of change. And that's really interesting to me, is what is that inciting incident?
Yeah. So for today, going with this theme of new year, new you, self-improvement, this is going to be 2025. This is my year to get stronger, get married, finally get that promotion, on and on and on. That's kind of the structure that I've created for us today. Is kind of in the theme of New Year's resolutions, even though none of these stories are really set as New Year's resolutions. But this idea of like, this is a kickoff for my next iteration of life. And this is where I'm going to be putting time, effort, and momentum into things. So I did what a lot of people do right now. And I went and talked with ChatGPT. And I said, hey, what are the top New Year's resolutions for most people. And it came back with to improve your health and wellness. Mm-hmm. So exercise, lose weight, maybe change your diet, walk more. Maybe I'm going to meditate. I'm going to relax, like less stress. So this umbrella of I'm going to improve my health and wellness. Next is sex and relationships. So I'm going to get a boyfriend or girlfriend or partner. I'm going to get married. I'm going to date more. I'm going to like put myself out there more for the purpose of a physical or romantic encounter, relationship, somewhere around there. The next most popular one is this is going to be the year that I learn a new skill or hobby. I'm going to teach myself how to crochet. I'm going to learn how to play pickleball, or I'm going to learn Mandarin Chinese, right? So how are they taking up maybe hobbies or working on their personal professional development? And lastly, this is going to be the year I get out of debt. This is where I quit my shitty job and I find my career. So they're saving money, they're reducing debt, they're wanting to make a change career-wise or start a new business or quit their job, somewhere around that. So those are the categories that we are going to be talking through today, and storylines and our recommendations and things we like about these structures. But Meg, where do you fall on New Year's resolutions or like word of the year? Do you do that? Is that something that you're doing?
Not a big fan of New Year's resolutions. I have done them in the past. I'm a bigger fan of quarterly goals. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like it's a little less overwhelming. Mm-hmm. What about you? Are you a resolutioner?
No, I'm not even actually much of a goal setter, truth be told. I'm not good at sticking to bigger things like that. My ADHD brain is like, if it's not in front of me, then I forget about it, really.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I had my own podcast. It was called Nikki Talks, because even then I was like, I don't want to have a business podcast. I want to just have interesting conversations. So one of those episodes I had she might be a doctor by now. She was almost done her PhD at the time, Alicia Nasser. And, she was a client of mine at the time. We were friends at the time. And I had her on to talk about New Year's resolutions and like, why can't people stick to these? Because her whole thing was on behavioral science and behavioral analysis, and how do people make decisions and stick to things was the topic of her PhD. And I remember we were talking about this, and she said, a lot of times people don't stick to them. One, because it's too big. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go to the gym this entire year. It's like, well, that takes you, it's too big. Like the effort to start is too big. So how do you make that smaller was one thing. But the other thing that she said, and I often think back to this, is something she called contact reinforcement. And that's often not really set up correctly. So the example is, use the gym example, because lose weight is a New Year's resolution for a lot of people. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. Well, you might do that for a little bit, but there's, when are you quote unquote done that goal? It's later. So you're not getting like rewarded for that going quickly. Instead, and then like what happens if like you have a really busy week, or you're on vacation, or you have a lot of deadlines and meetings, and you don't go to the gym the 3 times a week, then you've technically failed it. Versus if you say, in the next 5 days, I'm going to go to the gym twice, because you know your schedule for the next 5 days. 2 seems doable. You achieve that. You've now reinforced your decisions and your behaviors. We'll go to the next week. In the next week, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times. So you're constantly being reinforced in your actions. And that gives you like the good job dopamine, whatever, to be like, I'm doing really well. The other example she gives is like paychecks. Contacting reinforcement in your career is you get paid every 2 weeks. So, I'm struggling through stuff. This is really hard. Oh, I got paid. Okay, I can get through this. I'm going to the next thing. And she actually mentioned a couple of companies that are experimenting in Europe. I feel like in some of the Scandinavian countries, we're experimenting with the idea of weekly paychecks, so that their staff is constantly being reinforced every week that you are getting paid for your time, you're getting paid for your energy, you get paid for your effort. So this idea with New Year's resolutions is, to your point, quarterly is more manageable than a year, but it's also how are you doing that in kind of the day-to-day, getting reinforced and feeling that reinforcement. And that's one of the reasons why I suck at this shit. I remember I was with a coach a couple years ago, and they're like, let's set a goal. And I'm like, yeah, here's my goal. And they're like, you don't sound excited about it. I'm like, I'm not, because I know me. A month from now, I'm not going to be doing this. And they, well, Nikki, how can you do this? How can you really do this? Can you say? I'm like, no, reminders don't help. I have reminders on my phone to take my daily medication. 9 times out of 10, I forget to take them. So no, I don't fuck with resolutions. I'm bad at them. I recognize this about myself.
Have you ever read, okay, we're getting into self-help space here and sort of like behavioral psychology, and I love this for us. Have you ever read, Katie Milkman has a book called Why People Change?
No, I don't know this.
Okay, she's a professor, I think, at UPenn Wharton. So incredibly well-versed academic. And she's done a lot of research about the behavior of change and how we can encourage people to change more. And some of the things that she includes in her book is like, when are the opportunities that people are going to change? And New Year's, the reason New Year's works is because it is the first day. So it feels like a fresh start. It's called it's called the fresh start paradox, where it's like, when you feel like you have this new beginning, you're more likely to start making some of these changes. And so, you know, the first of the year is often a time where people are like, I want to try out this new activity, try out this new whatever. But other times that are very common are people's birthdays, except their 21st birthday. Nobody does it on their 21st birthday because they're so hungover. But every other year. Yeah, exactly. Or the first of the month is often a time where like there's an increase in gym memberships. There's an increase in healthier food being purchased at the grocery store. Even Mondays, people are more likely to make changes on a Monday, especially if the Monday is the first of the month. Boom. Like that's huge for people who are
like +5 mana going on that day.
Exactly.
What's the book called again, Meg?
Why People Change by Katie Milkman. I talk about this when I'm teaching SEO, when I'm teaching search engine optimization. I work with a lot of coaches and they're like, well, people want to get better. And I'm like, yeah, but what's their inciting incident? What is your ideal client's inciting incident where they're not going to wake up one day out of the blue and be like, today I want to get healthy. Unless something has happened to them. Yeah. You know, in the way that Chloe Brown almost gets hit by a bus, in the way that Henry, who we'll talk about next week, his partner breaks up with him. Like, what is the change that happens? What are those moments of change in our lives that make us want to improve in some way? That's what I get really interested about when it comes to these novels.
Ooh, excellent segue, Meg. Thank you for teeing that up. So let's kind of talk about our first category here. This idea of improving health and wellness, because this is the most common resolution, like New Year's resolution that people have. Oftentimes when the inciting incident is something like a breakup, a lot of times it's related to someone's health or appearance. So a character will be like, I need to lose weight. I need to be hot so I can win back my partner. I need to on and on and on and on. Or go to therapy. That could also kind of health and wellness, y'all. Maybe they have an inciting incident. It's like, you know what? I need a therapist, or I should really fucking meditate more. So with this one, we are going to talk about The Weight of It All next week, which is a book that involves kind of this idea of weight loss or physical change. But this is sometimes I think a tricky one as a reader and as a writer, because it's like, how do you talk about, I want to change my appearance without coming off as like fat phobic or ableist or anything like that? Because ultimately, again, these are romance stories. They get a partner or they get a relationship, usually after the transformation or in the midst of this transformation. So I think this one can sometimes be a little tricky for like...
Yeah, you know, when we were talking about this, I've actually read several of these because I'm currently in the process of writing a personal trainer romance. And I've read several that I would not recommend. Yeah. So we're not going to talk about them here. I could list them, but I don't want to shame anybody who wrote them, especially because many of these are like several years old and things have changed in the way that we talk about our bodies. But there are a lot that are like, you know, I read a personal trainer one where it's like they sat next to each other on a plane and she had to get the expansion in the belt. On the seatbelt, and she felt like she was being judged by the person sitting next to her who had this perfect body. And it turns out they lived in the same town. And he's like, well, let me train you because I feel sorry for you because you have this fat extender. And I was just like, yee, oh, no, this is not the way that I don't want it to come out of a place of shame. No. I read another where, you know, he starts training her. I can't remember how it all begins, but like maybe it was the same book, honestly, because I put it down because I stopped reading it. But it was like, you know what it was? She was on the way home from like her husband's funeral.
Oh, Fuck no. No, I don't love that. Hi, grieving widow who's probably going through some shit. You know what? You should feel ashamed that you are fat.
So maybe it was written a bit cleaner than that, but the way that I read it as somebody who has had struggles with my weight and body image, I was like, nope, I can't. So I think that this needs to be handled very carefully.
Yeah. Oh,
because it can so much sense. Go into the fat phobic space, or the losing weight will make you better and make you attractive and then people will love you space, which just, and I think 20 years ago, that was the prominent way of approaching it, is like, it's like the maintenance phase episode with where they talk about Richard Simmons, and Richard Simmons, like,
that was great
literally
episode, by the way.
Great, or I think it's 2 episodes, but like he literally starved himself and ended up in the hospital almost dead, and then he started going out into the world, and this was like in the 80s, so the way that they talked about things was different, but he started going out and being like, you don't want to end up like me, here's why you should be active. But that wasn't how he lost the weight. He literally almost died.
Yeah, because he starved himself, like literally.
From severe anorexia, before anorexia was a term that people were like really getting to know. He didn't know he was anorexic, you know, and like that time period, things have changed so much, but a lot of the books in this space are uncomfortably fat phobic.
Yeah, it's true. And I think you brought up a great point, like as you know, as a woman who has kind of experienced this, I think most of us, most people have experienced it, whatever your gender, but I think for women, it's so pointed. Even look at the movie like Bridget Jones's Diary. And I was listening to a podcast episode. I hate it, but I love it. Did an episode on this one years and years ago. And they were talking about Bridget Jones's Diary. You know, Bridget in that movie, and I haven't read the book, so I'm going to reference the movie, is, you know, she says, I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to get a nice career. I'm going to lose weight, on and on and on. And so much of the news around that time was, oh my God, look at how fat Renee Zellweger got. I'm like, girl, she's like a size 10, 12 in that movie. Like, not to put judgment on people's size and guessing her size, but like, they put her out as this, she's so fat. And I'm like, she's not in all,
she's average.
In most definition of the word. She looks like an average, you know, Western world woman. But like, there's such like this perception of women in terms of their size and appearance. I think generally more so than men. So to get a romance story into that does not have the get skinny, you fat fuck. Like it's hard.
It's hard.
And even some of like, again, we're talking about The Weight of It All next week. I read that a long time ago because the book is several years old now. But that was one of my worries when we first started it is, oh my God, you got dumped by your boyfriend because you're fat and lazy. Like then he goes and joins the gym. Now, the book does things differently after that, which I really appreciate. We'll talk about that then. But it is a little bit of a fear, I think, page to page in stories that are about somebody's health and wellness journey that you're kind of like, ooh, are they going to get made fun of by someone? Are they going to get called out by someone? Are they not going to feel happy? Or in some ways, maybe worse, are they only going to find happiness after they change completely? Mm-hmm. That's kind of nerve. It's a little hard as a reader to be like, I don't know where this is going and I want to feel happy, but I don't know if I'm going to be 20.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust this author.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you need to really trust the author to take you on that journey, you know? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if maybe there are going to be some fat phobic scenes and there might be some slurs that are thrown out there, and you have to trust the author to handle it in a way that is, and to give the content warnings, to give the triggers, you know, like I wrote a book with a transgender character. I had a transgender sensitivity reader. We had a lot of conversations about moments of transphobia, and I as the author, the box stops with me, I included trans slurs to showcase how far she's come and why she had to leave her family behind, and how much better off she is now that she's separated herself from that. But I made that decision to not tiptoe around it, but also to handle it with care, to give her the mental health support from her friends after that conversation. But as an author, you have to be so, so careful in those moments.
I love that you mentioned mental health aspect, because that does fall under the health and wellness episode. We saw it a little bit in Chloe Brown, where there is an incident and he goes, oh, I didn't handle that well. I've been told I should be in therapy. I have a therapist's business card, but this is the moment I'm like, yeah, I really should be fucking with therapy right now. So he does, which is great for him.
Coming back to that idea of you need a something to change in your life for you to change. right? Whether that's a positive or a negative. Sometimes you need that moment of something bad happened and now it's time, or something good happened and now it's time, right? But that recognition that things often trigger other things. An example that I love of a character getting therapy, one of my books of the year that we talked about 2 weeks ago on our Tingly episode.
The Tinglies!
The Tinglies! Was the Ex Vows by Jessica Joyce.
Oh, yeah.
It is a second chance romance, and between the breakup and them getting back together, the male main character goes to therapy, and that's the reason why they're able to reconcile. Like, spoiler alert, whatever. But that's part of the reason that he recognizes he was in a toxically anxious situation, and that's why it's one of the inciting factors as to why they broke up, why they need to have this second chance reunion. 5 years after the breakup, he finally realizes, oh, something has to change in my life. But it's because he goes to therapy that he's able to have the strength to make the change to go back into this world.
We love mental health representation. I was like, therapy is not my particular thing, which is why I do like it when you have things like that are just like around mindfulness, that are just around, like, I'm not much of a meditator. An aficionado of the meditation is not quite my jam either. But I do like it when your health and wellness is not just how do you lose weight or how do I become more physically attractive.
Yeah.
Because that is a part of it. And I know most folks, we would like to feel good how we are. And that shouldn't be connected to a size or shape or whatever. But it is kind of nice. Because again, going back to Chloe, like, again, I fucking cried so many times in that episode and while reading that book. When she was like, I want my body to do things, but guess what? It can't. I can't control that. What can I control? More of the mental aspect of that. And it's still going to suck. But I'm going to do my damnedest to at least work within that to feel better and to feel happier, more vibrant, on and on and on.
And I think also, like, I don't want to say that this used to be the case in romance and isn't anymore, because I think that there's always some sort of spectrum here. But there are romance books out there that are like, oh, you fall in love and you'll be cured of your trauma. Right? Like the magical
penis or appendage.
Magic penis.
Go.
Right? Yeah. And I love a book that recognizes, like, being in a supportive partnership and feeling supported emotionally can do the work, but like, you may also need the help of a professional. The penis is not that magical.
I love that. Anything else for health and wellness? Because I think you set us up quite beautifully for sex and relationships.
Let's talk about sex and relationships.
Do it. So this could be I need a boyfriend. I need a girlfriend. I need one of my favorite terms is man-panion. So this was.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
This was like many years ago. We had already graduated college, but one of my friends came and it was just kind of saying, hey, what's going on with your life? They're like, oh, I have this guy. Like, he's not my boyfriend, but it's kind of more than dating. And I think someone at the table coined, oh, he's your man-panion. And I was like, this is amazing. I love it so hard.
I kind of feel like there's a term for this in the non-binary space of like a joyfriend.
Joyfriend. Yeah, there is. Which I also really like, but I love man-panion. Okay, so people's sex and relationships, maybe it's they're just getting out of a bad one and they want a good one. Maybe they're tired and they feel like maybe life is passing them by and I want to be in love. I want to get married. For some people, it could also just be around sex. Like, I want to lose my virginity, which is an archaic term, but there we go. I want to have sex. I want to have this experience. We sometimes see it in like YA kind of I can't go to college, still a virgin, so I'm going to do whatever. I think I've brought this up on previous episodes, is Project Hero by Briar Prescott. It's about a kind of quote unquote nerdy character named Andy who is in love with his best friend, but he's like, I'm nerdy, I'm quiet, I'm a physics geek. My friend is like, he's a sports guy. He's like a jock. He's outgoing. He's gregarious. I need to give myself a makeover because I'm the sidekick and I want to be the hero, which is why he, in his brain, calls this thing Project Hero. So he meets Law, who is a hockey player. And he's like, hey, a lot of guys on the team are about to not be able to participate in the team because they're failing physics. Can you tutor? And he's like, hey, I will help you if you help me become cool, because his sister's a stylist. He's a cool guy. And then over time, obviously Andy realizes that he's actually not in love with his best friend. He's in love with Law, who loved him who liked and appreciated and loved him the entire time, regardless of how he looked. So it's just kind of really cute, this idea that he actually didn't need to change that much to find love, but he did have to make a decision. This is Andy, to pursue a relationship. He couldn't just sit back, but he was like, I need this in my life. This is my chance to get my best friend to fall in love with me, to notice me, because he doesn't notice me right now. And then he ends up, of course, finding out I didn't need to change all that much, and my best friend wasn't for me. It's actually this other super hot guy.
Yay! I love that.
Hot guys.
What a hard decision.
Yes.
That description reminds me of The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hong.
Yes.
This is, let me grab the character's name, Stella.
Mm-hmm.
Stella is like a physicist or an actuary. I can't remember exactly, but like incredibly talented with math. Mm-hmm. She is on the autism spectrum. So she's super intellectual, but doesn't always understand the relationship sides of things. Mm-hmm. So she decides to hire an escort to give her, she calls it practice, to help her practice kissing and practice having sex. And she makes herself a checklist of like, here are the things I want to try, here's the different positions that we can try. And, like she goes into it with a full plan. And then Michael, her partner, her escort, they go to a hotel room and she's like, okay, here's what I want to learn tonight. And he's like, we cannot do this all in a night. And he's like, and we're not going to do it in this order, right? Like, we're going to flow with it a little bit more. We're going to see what happens. And so she hires him and they fall in love. But then there's she hired him. So how does that work? He's trying to pay off medical debt for his family. So he can't say no to it. And she's very wealthy because she's so well off in her career. So there's this imbalance. But it's really, it's the question of, what does it mean to practice sex, but also like to fall in love when you don't necessarily understand how sex and love are correlated. And it's a fascinating book.
Yeah, it actually, just when you're talking about like the list, it kind of, what's that Aubrey Plaza movie? The To-Do List, I think. And, it's a romantic comedy. It's not quite in the same vein as a lot of these stories, but it's this idea, I think she's like a nerdier kind of student who graduates high school, and all of her friends are like having sex and doing other things. She goes, I can't go to college without having done XYZ. So she comes up with this thing called like the To-Do List. So it's a little bit more of like a raunchier American Pie vibe of like sex comedy. But it is still, I appreciate a good list.
Totally. Okay, so that reminds me of 9 Rules to Rake When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. Do you know this one?
I feel like you've mentioned the title of it before, and I do love alliteration, but no, I do not know this book. I actually haven't read anything by Sarah McLean, and it's a name that's come up quite a bit.
Okay. Maybe we should put this on our list of things to read in 2025.
Put it on the list. Is it historical?
It's historical. I don't feel like we haven't read a historical in a really long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It is, Callie is the main character. She is a spinster. So she's like, I don't know, 25. And she's on the shelf because she's been passed over season. She's a bit of a wallflower. And I think the inciting incident is that she like is at this ball, standing along the wall. She goes outside into the gardens and she sees this man who she's been in love with for like years, making out with someone else, having sex in the balcony, right?
As rakes are wont to do.
Right. And so she comes up with a list of these 9 things that she wants to do. And one of them is like taking off her spinster hat and throwing it in the fire. And it starts there. And she works through the list and she gets ballsy and she goes to this rake that she had this crush on. She goes to his house and she's like, I want you to teach me how to kiss because I don't want to die without being kissed. Or, like that sort of vibe to it.
Okay. Yeah.
So, let's put this and then each of them is like, I want to learn to fence. I want to learn like things that men do, but women aren't allowed to do in Victorian society, or maybe it's Regency. I think it's Regency here.
Somewhere back there. Back in the olden days.
Yeah. It's because it's Sarah McLean's debut novel. So I think it starts Regency, but then as she builds, she moves into the Victorian Victorian era, and she's like, damn it, people buy Regency, they don't buy Victorian, but it's Regency's only like 8 years.
It's true. Oh, okay, that's fun. You're talking about like burning the spinster cap. Why do so many inciting incidents of personal growth start with burning shit?
Because you want to change and you want to like okay, my kids were reading Harry Potter, so phoenixes are really fresh in my mind right now.
Like, where is that coming from?
Yeah, no, like the Order of the Phoenix is the book he's reading right now, and like, you know, the way that Fox like burns himself down and turns into a new phoenix. I feel like people just want that vibe of like, I'm gonna burn my old life and start a new one.
You know, in The Weight of It All, there's a threat to burn his ex's things. There's like burning of my spinster cap. Like, is it really about like, rising from the ashes, or is it we just like the violence of flames?
I mean, there's something symbolic about it. It's kind of like burning your bras in the 70s as part of that second wave feminism of like, we are oppressed by this and we want it gone. There's that like feeling of a bonfire of new, fresh life coming out of it.
Oh, you know what? I kind of like that. This also just made me think of, talking about rakes and people doing things that are meant for men, including sex. The 40-year-old virgin is kind of one of them too, right? Like, it's a male main character, which is kind of fun. Steve Carell is so brilliant in that movie. But, I think his character's name is Andy. He's pretty happy in his life. It's not really going too far. And then his coworkers, Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen and the others, find out that he's a virgin. So they're like, dude, we got to help you fuck. Like, let's go. And along the way, he does start dating more, but he also goes out, he gets promoted at work.
I'm going to give you one more recommendation in this space, which is Catherine Nolan's novel, Not the Marrying Kind. Fiona is like a type A attorney. She has a list of everything that she wanted to accomplish that she wrote when she was like 17, get into an Ivy League, go to law school, get the job at the big law corporation, and then get married by the time you turn 30. And she looks at the list when she's 29 and she's like, oh shit.
I'm behind.
I am behind on the list. What do I need to do? And she comes up with a plan. I love these books with these plans and these checklists. And then like this guy that she's always had a crush on comes back home, and he is not the marrying kind. And so she has to sort of readjust what her expectation is from a relationship of, I'm attracted to this person and I like him. We're friends. We have great chemistry, but we're not going to get married. Am I okay with that? And meanwhile, he is a bit more of like a nomadic. He, works in bicycle shops. He travels all over the country for these various jobs. And then his dad gets sick. And so he comes home to New York City. I think or maybe something wrong with his dad's job. I think there's something wrong with his dad's job. And he comes to like do a fundraiser. They do the fundraiser together. They fall in love. And he has to make the decision then of choosing the nomadic lifestyle versus choosing his family that he's sort of left behind.
Oh, okay. That sounds fun too. This made me think of going back to the first category. You're talking about like therapy and working with experts. This is where I think the funny part of this, sex and relationships comes in, is like, I'm going to hire a sex coach. I'm going to hire a dating coach. Like, those are also really fun. And ultimately, a lot of the time, like, that coach ends up being the actual love interest. Like, it happens in Project Hero. Law is the one teaching Andy like how to be a quote unquote hero in his own life. And then they end up dating. The movie Hitch, Will Smith, Kevin James steals that movie from him. But like, he hires a dating coach because he's in love with Allegra. And it's like, helping him build confidence and helping him, get the expert. Now, of course, in that one, Hitch and Albert don't fall in love. It's a straight one. She gets Allegra, which I like. But Rocket Science by K.M. Neuhold is interesting too. It's Elijah and Pax, and it's Elijah's best friend is Pax's younger brother, and he goes to college. I think we talked about this one a little bit in our Best Friend's Brother episode.
We did. I'm remembering it now.
Yeah. So like he kind of goes out, and Elijah's best friend says to his brother, hey, my best friend just moved out to kind of where you live. Excuse me. He's a little bit nerdy. He's a little bit quiet. Could you just like be his friend? And Pax kind of meets up with Elijah, and it's not necessarily I'm going to be your sex coach, but like, I'm going to help you get out there. I'm going to help you do whatever. And then they kind of start to feel attracted to each other, and they kind of decide, yeah, we're kind of going to have this like friends with Benny like type of relationship. You're going to help me be more outgoing and more confident. And Pax is like, cool. I like sex without any sort of ties. And of course that changes. But there's a discovery moment when Elijah's best friend finds out, what the fuck, Pax, you've been fucking Elijah, who's my best friend, but also I've kind of had a crush on him the entire time. So, The Duff, the movie The Duff.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh my God, it's so funny. It's one of my comfort watches. I watch it a lot. But Mae Whitman is kind of like a geeky kind of emo girl, and her two best friends are like the most popular girls in school. And her next door neighbor and childhood friend, played by Robbie Amell, is, hot, popular, and they kind of have this funny antagonistic relationship. They make fun of each other all the time. And then he kind of says to Mae Whitman, oh, like, you're the duff in your friend group. And she goes, excuse me, what's that? And he goes, oh, well, your two friends are super hot, so you help them look better by comparison. And she's like, fuck you for calling, you called me, because it's designated ugly fat friend is what duff stands for. Yeah. And he's like, well, I wasn't calling you duff, but you are the duff. And she goes, fuck you very much. She kind of breaks up with her friends because, like, clearly you only saw me as your duff. And her friends are like, what the fuck, girl? But she goes to Robbie Amell and basically says, like, hey, there's this musician guy I have a crush on. Help me get him. Help me become more confident at dating, and I'll help you pass whatever science or chemistry class you need to pass to stay on whatever sports team you're playing. Sports. Mm-hmm. And of course, so he starts teaching her, like, hey, this is how you should dress. He takes her shopping. This is how you should ask him out for a date. Like, be confident here, and there's a funny little scene where he's like writing out like sports plays on a whiteboard of like, okay, you go to the restaurant. This is where you sit. You want to find the lighting. You get this booth. And it's really cute. Of course, they end up together at the end of it. It's a very cute movie.
To an extent, what we're talking about also, not always, but we have a bit of that like Cyrano de Bergerac feeling
a little bit,
of it. Where like Cyrano is the one who is ugly, but he's helping someone else get the girl, and then the girl, I think that's how that ends. It's been a really long time since
a lot of people die in that at the end.
Yeah,
it's not exactly necessarily a happy ending.
But the idea Cyrano
dies.
Okay, let's rewrite it. This is Cyrano the HEA.
Yeah.
Of like, she realizes that he was the one behind it all along.
Let's talk about this next category, because I think it's a nice segue. You're really good at like giving us segues into the next thing. Hobbies, professional development, having something fun. I think the most popular of this, it's not quite a romance novel because it is a memoir, but the movie version of it is Paige's romance, is Eat, Pray, Love, right? Like, she gets divorced. Her rebound relationship doesn't go that well. So she goes to Italy to find her zest for life. She goes to India to find inner peace. She goes to Bali to find passion, ends up with Javier Bardem, and who wouldn't want to end up with Javier Bardem? Even though the real life story of how that whole thing went after is not great. Not as
That's the lovely thing about memoirs, is you can finish them at the moment you need to without needing to know the entire life story.
But yeah, like
Gilbert stayed in the limelight, so we still get to know that it didn't work out. Okay, fine.
Yeah, she's gone through a lot of shit. I feel bad for her, right? Because she split with Javier Bardem. She married her wife. Her wife died quite tragically. And then she, I believe, got married to the Javier Bardem's character's best friend.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, there's a complicated life going on. But that movie, again, is about how do I change my situation and try new things. Under the Tuscan Sun is another example. I've read the book and the movie, but just to reference the movie, like Diane Lane, same deal. Husband cheats on her. She's like, fuck this. I'm going to take myself to Italy. And then she sees a thing and she goes, I'm going to buy this house in Italy, and I'm going to date, and I'm going to make friends, and I'm going to get these new hobbies, and ends up with a really hot younger guy at the end of the movie. What is it with white women running away to Europe?
Wait, so isn't there something about how Stella got her groove back being similar?
Oh, yeah. Doesn't she like split with her partner?
Angela Bassett, and
like God,
she ends up with Taye Diggs at the end, right? Like,
I actually don't know if they stay together at the end.
Maybe they don't.
It is like a comedy drama. No, they do get together. I just checked the Wikipedia. Taye Diggs plays Winston Shakespeare. It's been so long since I've seen this movie. But yeah, she is, she's like, she gets divorced, I believe.
Because, and then she goes to Jamaica.
Single mom.
Yeah.
She meets Winston Shakespeare, who's younger. Oh my God, fucking Angela Bassett in that movie. She's gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Still gorgeous.
And she's on like on 911 now, which is so funny to me that she's in like a procedural show. And I'm like, this is fucking Angela Bassett. And she's on a procedural, which I love, amazing. Right? It's regular money. That's why like Ellen Pompeo is like, yeah, I'm still on Grey's Anatomy. It's not 9 to 5. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, this idea, like, obviously Angela Bassett, not a white woman, but like, what is it with women going on vacation?
And ending up with really much younger men.
Yeah. Maybe it's because their day-to-day life is so stressful and that's what they want to get away of. They're like, I just need a vacation.
It's a story. if we're going to have a story that people are going to go to the theater for, women are going to go to watch a woman, reinvent her life and end up with a younger man. Surprise!
I love that. But those are also all fun examples. And it's obviously they are a little bit of wish fulfillment. Not many of us can afford to like take up all these new hobbies. Not many of us can afford to go on all these vacations and buy a Tuscan villa. Like,
I will just take a sabbatical for a year and travel to Indonesia and India and Italy.
She was so lucky because she sold the book before she went. So her book advance funded that whole trip.
So smart. Not lucky. That's smart.
That's smart.
That's using your resources.
Yeah.
I want to also add, since we were talking about skills, more so than hobbies, but skills. I really loved London Fog by E.M. Lindsay. It is God, I can't remember the name of the main character now, but his sister has adopted a child who's deaf. And so he is learning American Sign Language in order to be able to communicate with her. And he's testing it out and trying to learn it from his partner in that book too. So it's not necessarily the inciting incident is I want to learn ASL. It's I want to reconnect with my sister and her daughter, which is a really beautiful approach to that too, where it's not self-improvement, it's family connection.
I like that. That's also really fun. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm getting served so many Instagram ads right now with like the punch sewing thing or the punch embroidery.
I'm not, so I don't know what you're talking about.
It basically it's not crocheting, but you have like a tool that has yarn in it, and all you're doing is like punching it through the canvas, and it stitches, and you can like make pictures and things like that. And I just keep seeing these. I'm like, is this something I'm gonna do this year? Am I gonna pick up this hobby?
At some point, your impulse control is gonna snap, and you're gonna buy it, and you're gonna have it in your room for like 20 minutes, and you're gonna be like, I actually hate this, and then you're gonna throw it out. I'm just
let me show you
right
this.
Do I know you?
So I am holding up a house hippo kit. So for all you Canadians who know about the house hippo, I saw this on Instagram, and it was a sew your own. It's to hand stitch your own felt house hippo. This is such like a pivotal moment in childhood for so many Canadians. I haven't made it yet, but it's here. And I decided this actually might be that, I'm just about to go on my holiday break. I think I'm going to teach myself to embroider a house hippo. So I feel like maybe it'll happen this year.
Okay, I will follow up with you the next time that we batch record.
There we go.
Where's your house hippo? I want to see it.
It's going to be super cute.
All right, and then our final topic is money, is making up, being more financially responsible, getting a better career, reducing your debt. I don't have any of these.
It's so funny because I know I've read them before. There are people who like either quit their job or they finally ask for that promotion. But the top two that came to mind for me were actually movies. So Legally Blonde is one of them. And it kind of starts out, Elle gets dumped and she's like, I got to get Warner back. So she decides to go to Harvard. And eventually does find out that she's good at it, and he does well. Granted, the second film completely throws everything that she learned in the first film out the window. It's complete trash. But in that first one, she is kind of like, yes, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to, become a lawyer, and gets really smart. But the other one that I really love, have you ever seen the movie Working Girl?
I never have.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so 80s. It is Melanie Griffith, Sigourney Weaver, Harrison Ford. It's so good. So basically, Melanie Griffith plays this character who's like a secretary, and she has ambition. Like, this movie's like from the late 80s. So she's a secretary. She's from Staten Island, kind of like whatever this portrayed as like the Staten Island version of trailer trash is kind of how she's portrayed. Huge hair, big earrings, the fashion in this movie. Because this movie is like from 1988. It's so good. But, she is a secretary in Sigourney Weaver's office. And it's kind of interesting to be in there because Sigourney Weaver is like one of the only women bosses at this stockbroker firm. So at first, Tess, who's Melanie Griffith's character, kind of sees Sigourney Weaver as like an idol. Like, oh my God, she is a powerful woman. Like, I want to work with her. And you think it's going to be a beautiful mentorship relationship, but eventually we find out Sigourney Weaver is not a very nice person. She's very much into pushing other women down so she can stay on top. But when she goes on a ski vacation, Sigourney Weaver, she breaks her leg. So she's out of the office for a while because she's stuck in like Aspen or something. And Tess had been giving her like ideas on acquisitions and things like that because she's very smart. She does a lot of research. And Sigourney Weaver, Catherine, is saying, yeah, I'll pass those on for sure. She finds out while Catherine is away having broken her leg and she has to go to like Catherine's apartment to like get some stuff. She finds out that Catherine has been taking her ideas and passing them off as her own.
Of course.
So Tess is like, fuck this. I'm going to pretend to be Catherine. And she starts taking meetings in Catherine's name. And she partners up with Harrison Ford's character, who's at a different company. And she's like, let's form a partnership. She's like, nobody takes me seriously. So she starts dressing better. She starts kind of taking off the obnoxious jewelry. She kind of tames her hair. She becomes a lot more sophisticated in how she looks and how she presents herself. She starts borrowing some of Catherine's clothes to kind of show up and be more professional. And she does really, really well. Eventually, of course, she gets found out and Catherine is like, throw this bitch out. She's stolen my ideas. And Tess is like, fuck you, bitch. Here's how I came up with this ideas. You tell me how you did it. And of course, Catherine gets found out and Tess gets offered like a really powerful job at the end of the movie. And that's part of her upward ascendancy. But yeah, she kind of, she's decided, and she has a boyfriend at the beginning who's like, why don't you just want to stay here in Staten Island and get married and have my babies? And she's like, no, I want this big, important Manhattan career. I have ideas. I'm very smart. And of course, she's with Jack Traynor, played by Harrison Ford, who's beautiful. But she does have this moment of like, no, like, I don't want to be at my friend's bachelorette party. And she's just so happy to be an Italian housewife on Staten Island. Like, I want to be a powerful woman in Manhattan. Maybe she doesn't go about it in the best way by impersonating her boss and wearing her clothing and kind of stealing her ex-boyfriend, because Harrison Ford's character used to date Sigourney Weaver. But there is this moment of she's like, nope, this is what I'm going to do. And it works out for her. Mostly.
It clearly does.
So the other thing I did when kind of preparing for this episode, because here's my challenge, Meg, when you read as many books as I do. I know. First world reader problems. I know I've read so many books with these categories, with these themes. I could just never fucking find the names of them. So I know there are more out there, but I started kind of going through the romance books Reddit to see if I could find suggestions. And one of the books I saw come up a lot as a recommendation related to this category was
At First Bite by Olivia Dane.
Yeah. Have you read anything by her?
I have. I read her Spoiler Alert series, and I think you would love her Spoiler Alert series, even though it is MF, because I know you usually are an MF person. It is, it's a fanfic. Okay.
What?
Yes, it's a fanfic rom-com. So he is a famous celebrity on like a Game of Thrones type TV show, a show that has a huge fanfic community, and he doesn't like the way that some of the screenwriters have written the plot, so he goes into AO3 and he starts writing fanfic about how he wishes his character was being portrayed as the screenwriters are writing it, but nobody knows that it's him. It's an anonymous AO3 account. And while he's writing a fanfic, he meets someone else who's writing also incredible fanfic, and they strike up a relationship and they start beta reading each other's stuff, and they become like super great friends, right? But he secretly is the actor on the show playing this character. And then she is doing cosplay of the show. And so she, on her Instagram account, she starts showing off her cosplay outfits in Instagram. But she's plus sized, and so the characters or some people are trolling her and being like, and tagging the actor and being like, rude. You would never end up with a woman like this. Like, and he like feels really bad about it. So he's like, no, I would totally go out with a woman like that. Do you want to go on a date when I come to California next month? And he asks her out, not knowing that she's the one writing the fanfic, and they have this like friend relationship, and he's sort of falling in love with her in these conversations they're having on the AO3 boards. And so obviously there's this big secret identity reveal. It's got a little bit of that you've got male trope in it, but they go to Comic-Con together and they go as a couple. And so it has, and the other thing is that it's very fat positive. Even though she's a plus size heroine, he never says to her like, well, if you want to be with me, you have to lose weight. But she has a lot of those feelings we'll talk about next week of like, he is eating all this healthy food. Does he expect me to eat that too? Because her family has always been like, you don't need to why are you eating that? You should be eating this, like a lot of that coming up in the story. So I think you'd really love that. And then the sequel to that, can't remember the name of that one, but it's the coworker who is creating all of this drama and trouble offset. And so they hire like a handler for him, and he falls in love with the handler, who is also a plus size woman. She's shorter. And there's a lot of fan pushback about like, why would he be with her? You know? But it starts as an enemies to lovers in that case, because he's like, I don't need to be handled. She's like, I don't care. This is my job.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because the At First Spite one came up as like someone, I guess the main character is kind of like not sure about her career and where she's going, so she decides to make some changes. She's also broken up with like a fiance or a longtime partner. I'm intrigued by all of this because that At First Spite came up a lot in the Reddit on.
Well, yeah, that sounds interesting. Do you want to read one of these for? Oh, we have our birthday episode next month. Do you want to read one of these? Do you want to read the fanfic one or the At First Spite one?
Honestly, I'm probably going to read all of them.
Okay, we'll do At First Spite because I haven't read it yet, and because it came out more recently, so maybe people will. All right, there we go.
Decision made.
Half of our February is done because of this episode, man.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe the second book will be out by then in the Heart of the Space series. I don't know. We're going to see. Love that. Okay, so that's kind of like a wrap up of our self-improvement, our journeys of self-discovery and self-betterment deep dive episode. Meg, what do you ship the most about this genre, about this trope?
I think what I ship is that it's not the magic peen. It's not the man comes along.
I just took a sip of water. That was fucking rude. That's a shirt. It's not the magical peen.
I know it's not the magic peen, but it's like, it's so often, especially in like older books, life is shit and then you meet someone and then life is magic. It's like this Cinderella story of rags to riches, and the Prince Charming will come and save you. And I think the thing that I like about this self-improvement style is like they may fall in love, but they end up not saving themselves, but making these decisions about themselves to make their life better and falling in love in the process. And the person that they're with falls in love with that whoever they are at whatever stage they're in. I really love that. What about you? What do you ship most about this sort of self-improvement trope?
I fairly similar to you. I think it's this idea that for whatever reason, these characters decide I want to choose something better for myself. I want to create something better for myself, whether that's I look better, whether it's I have more sex, or I find the person, whether it's my life is better. Trite saying, but rising tide lifts all boats, is they might be focusing on one aspect of their life, but inevitably other parts of their life start to improve. And it's for that reason that they get their happy ever after. It's not that all of a sudden they're a size 2. That's the thing that got them a boyfriend. It's during that journey to, let's say, a size 2
or 10,
whatever it is, right. Like they started feeling more confident. They started putting themselves out there. They started having more joy in their day-to-day life. And that's ultimately the thing. The self-improvement is the vehicle for their happy ever after. It is not why they get their happy ever after.
Yeah, it's not the outcome.
Exactly. It's sweet, and I love it. Amazing. Well, before we head into our final question of the episode, a gentle reminder. You know what? Not so gentle. I'm being decisive. Rate, review, and fucking describe, people. Or subscribe. I messed it up. Now they can't be. No, they're not going to be upset with me. Hello, folks. Please rate, review, and subscribe. We would love that. It helps us with all of the magical algorithmic things online. And also, words of affirmation make us want to change and be better. And don't you want to be a part of our happy ever after process? So get over to Substack, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Rate, review, subscribe. We would totes appreciate. Meg, who or what are you shipping this week?
I am shipping a book club. So
tell me more.
As of the day that we are recording tonight, there's a book club in my town that is reading Peppermint Bark for their December book.
What? That's so cute. Tell me more.
And they have invited me to be the guest author live. They asked me last month, and I ordered, 20 books for that way the book club could all get them at the author rates. So they all have the paperback copies. They invited me. We're doing an ornament exchange because it's the December book club. Apparently the host brings the wine. So my friend's picking up ornament tonight. I'm like, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit nervous because it's my first time being sort of a panelist or not leading a conversation, but being part of a conversation. But it's also really exciting to be like in a room of people who have all read the same thing. We'll have this discussion. My friend who invited me and nominated the book was like, normally we have about a 50% turnout rate, but this is the first time that we had the author come and we have like 100% RSVPs. So I'm just excited to meet my neighbors and like have this conversation. We actually have a full romance group in our town. There's so many romance writers in my town. It like really should be Desperate Housewives. So I'm like, okay, if you guys like having authors here, I will introduce you to new authors, but it's exciting for me to be like the first author to do this and to have this experience of going to meet people in person for the book club is really nerve-wracking and exciting. My social anxiety is like pretty high about it. So I said to my friend, like, can you pick me up so I don't have to walk into a stranger's house where I don't know anyone?
Yeah, that's always my thing too. I'm like, I don't want to walk in the front door by myself.
Yeah.
Like, who do I talk to? What do I
exactly. So I'm like, we'll just go in together. She's like, yep, I'm on it. So I'm really excited about that. I'll let y'all know how it goes. I'll probably post about it on the gram
awesome.
while it's happening in December. And then I'll probably post about it again after this episode's gone live to let you know how it is.
Ooh, very nice. You're going to do great.
What about you? What are you shipping this week?
So Fae Quinn released another book.
Already? Didn't she just put one out last month for Christmas?
Yeah. This one's called I'm Not Your Pet. It's an alien romance.
She's winning so far.
I know. Happy
and the aliens. Yeah.
Honestly, if you look at Fae Quinn's work, she's like the Spooky Boy series, so she does like paranormal. Then she did like the really sweet Christmas Daddy series, and this one is a share. It's only 2 books are out yet, but it's Aaron Hawke wrote the first book in this kind of I guess shared universe. And this one is called I'm Not Your Pet. So it does have like human slavery in it. Humans are abducted from Earth. So one of the human character Hugo is kidnapped from Earth, and he works in essentially like an alien strip club. And there's a little bit of sex work going on, and he's the type of character that he's like, yeah, you know what, I could be upset about it, but really I got to roll with it for my own survival. So she kind of like writes her way around like how horrific the situation actually is, and you just you accept it. You're like, this is the world. It is what it is. It's not meant to be looked at too hard. But then there's a character called Roark, and he's a big fluffy pink shark man.
A shark man.
He's a shark man.
He's a shark man.
Yeah, and he is like captain of a ship, a spaceship who comes to town, and he kind of sees Hugo in the windows, kind of like how they have in Amsterdam sex clubs. You're like, oh. Mm-hmm. And he ends up buying Hugo from like this brothel owner. But the thing is, they don't speak the same language, and Hugo doesn't have a transplant chip yet. So when he was in the strip club, he only got a temporary translator like sometimes, but for the most part, he doesn't have one. And that's one of the things he struggles with is he can't communicate. Roark obviously doesn't speak English. He speaks an alien language, and neither one of them have translators. So for the first couple weeks they're together on Roark's ship, they have to learn to communicate, and neither one of them have any idea what the other one is doing.
I love this.
Like, so there's this whole bit of Hugo's like, there's a big fluffy pink shark man who has bought me, and I don't know what's expected of me. Mm-hmm. And Roark bought him because he thinks Hugo is his mate, and he really respects him. And he thinks this because when they were in the strip club, Hugo thought he had to sexually service Roark. So he is like, I guess I'm giving this shark man a blowjob. And Roark is like, oh no, because in his culture, offering to perform sexual acts is essentially like a marriage proposal. Huh. So Roark is like, yeah, okay, yes, human, yes, I will buy you and take you with me. But he doesn't really know how to react around them. So it's a lot of them just trying to communicate. Eventually they do fall in love, and there's a bunch of other shit that happens. And this was such a funny one for me because, I can't picture things, and the logistics of their relationship are fascinating sexually. Because you're like, this is a big fluffy pink shark man, and who has spots that correspond to his mood. Like his spots will change color depending on his mood. And then eventually there is another shipmate of Roark's who does speak a little bit of English. So he kind of starts speaking with Hugo, and in the night while Hugo is sleeping, this older guy is teaching Roark to speak English, and it's like, oh, he's learning English for me. And they have dates, and it's kind of cute, but when you think about it just from a conceptual standpoint, it's so absurd. It's a shark man, and he is pink. But it is like really cute. It is sexy. It's fun. I didn't think I would like it because alien stuff for me, like the logistics of it, I can't get my head around it. So sometimes I just don't read it. But this was really cute. I'm Not Your Pet by Fae Quinn. Recommending.
Love it. Well, that wraps up our episode about self-improvement and gave us 2 new books to read over the next few months. So if you want to read along with us, check out The Weight of It All by N.R. Walker, which we'll be doing next week. And then we just added 2 more to our list, which is At First Spite by Olivia Dade and 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking to Kay Sterling about her new book, Truth or Spare. So we've got plenty of reading if you want to do read along with us, or just pick and choose the ones that you like and join us and be part of the conversation over at Substack. And we'll see you next week. Nikki?
Okay, bye!